am a Wiradjuri woman with Cowra connections, family connections to Cowra. One thing that I'll say before we start is this session will be recorded. So if you do wish to stay on, we will accept that as permission to have you as part of that recording. This information session is about the Justice Reinvestment grant program that DCJ have currently open at the moment. And it's just to give you a bit of information about the program itself, as well as a few other things that will be helpful for you in going through the process. So as I said, my name is Melissa Hamilton. I am from Thirawiri. We are a 100% Aboriginal owned and managed organisation. And our role in this grant program or in this process is to, first of all, facilitate these couple of information sessions in this stage, but then also, importantly, in stage 2 of this program is to provide support to applicants to actually write and submit their applications, which we can talk a bit more about later in the session. I will pass on to my colleague Jason to introduce himself, as well as the DCJ staff who are also online to answer any questions and provide support throughout this session. So Jason, I'll hand it to you. Thank you.
Hi everyone, Jason Ganeenan. I'm a Gunda Jamara man and associate at Thirawiri, so supporting in the delivery of the ELI phase at the moment. So, Paula.
Hello everyone, my name is Paula Novotna and I'm joining you on Barramudigal land, sovereign and unceded Barramudigal land here in Parramatta, and I'm joined with my colleague Juliana, and we're part of the crime prevention team. My role is a senior policy and projects officer, and we're here to answer everyone's questions. Really excited to see this amazing turnout. We've also got 2 of our colleagues from the grants team, Ella and Sarah, and we've got a guest as well from Boxar, Alana. So we look forward to the Q&A session. Back to you, Melissa. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you. So before I start the official proceedings, I would like to acknowledge that I'm dialing in from Bidjigal country and pay my respects to elders past and present on this country, but also extend that respect to the elders from all the lands that you guys are dialing in from and from your home countries if you don't happen to be on your home country. A couple of things is if you want to put in where you're dialing in from, your name and your org and the country maybe in the chat, that'd be great to give us an idea of how far spread you guys are. That'd be wonderful. And also, we've just got a poll in the chat as well in regards to Smarty Grants, which is the program that the applications are actually applied for online. So if you could just put in the yes or no answer to that question as well, that would be wonderful. It's just regarding a walkthrough of the Smarty Grants form, if any of you would be interested in actually seeing that and how that actually looks a bit later on in the session if we have time. So thank you all again for joining us this afternoon. Today we'll be talking about the Justice Reinvestment grant program, and a couple of things that we'll cover is what is Justice Reinvestment first of all, the grant program, so an overview of the grant program and what it actually is, timeline, some important dates that you need to remember and to action, and then also some other key information pertaining to the program. And then we'll have a Q&A session towards the end. We've designed it to kind of keep us talking as little as possible so that we can have a lot of interaction Q&A sessions towards the end, so we can answer anything that may have come up either from the program or the Smarty Grants process or anything else that comes up. So thank you. So first of all, I guess we'll discuss or present to you what Justice Reinvestment is. So the concept of Justice Reinvestment is aiming to reduce the contact Aboriginal people have with the justice system, the criminal justice system. So when we talk about Justice Reinvestment in terms of the grant program, what we're looking for is initiatives that have a focus on, first of all, being community-led, so local solutions to local issues, but also that it is systems-focused and it's concentrated on making significant and, I guess, sustainable change. So not necessarily just within the criminal justice system, but also any other issues or any other, I guess, aspects that may come up that contribute to the contact with the justice system. It also should be informed by data and evidence. So that could be community data. So if you've got your local community data, you know your community better than anybody else. So it includes that. If you've already got some data that you want to that would support your application in terms of the initiative that you want to put forward. But also, you'll see later on, you may have access to government data. So also having government data to support, again, the initiative that you want to put forward to the program. We will go through a couple of examples in just a sec. I'll pass to Paula. But I guess one of the important things to remember when Paula is talking about the examples is that these are local solutions to the local communities that the initiatives are in. So while we're giving you examples, it doesn't mean it has to be that. It doesn't mean it has to even be like that. It's just examples of what Justice Reinvestment initiative could be. So with that, I'll pass over to you, Paula, just for some examples of what it could be.
Thanks, Melissa, and thank you, everyone. I feel like Justice Reinvestment is really broad, as Melissa was saying. It has that systems focus, and it's much more about like that collective impact. So community coming together to plan for real and sustained change. I like what you said, Melissa, about significant and sustained change. I feel like that's one of the markers of the Justice Reinvestment approach. So we're not, like mostly what people know about grant programs, especially government grant programs, is more individual programs like, a night patrol or a drug and alcohol rehab support program. And it's not, so I guess Justice Reinvestment takes a larger lens and has a larger plan for community-led change. So just that, like you can put in for a program, but it has that surrounding, I guess, authority of the community that has come together. And if you don't have that in your local place, then you can absolutely submit a grant to like start to bring community together and start to have those discussions about, well, how can we reduce people's contact with the criminal justice system? What are some of the ways that that's possible locally? So just to give you this, there's so many examples. There's some initiatives that call themselves Justice Reinvestment. There's other initiatives that are still working within that approach or the Justice Reinvestment framework that haven't called themselves Justice Reinvestment. So if you look at what Melissa took you through in terms of like those 4 main ingredients, if you like, about it being community-led, Aboriginal community-led, having that underpinning of data. So knowing either that's community data or that's government crime data, and having that systems focus. So there's examples, long-standing examples, say, through Aboriginal Affairs and the local decision-making framework, like Barang Regional Alliance on the Central Coast or Murray-Parky Regional Assembly further out west. They very much have that community-led governance. There's also like the Aboriginal community controlled sector that funnels that up as well. Like an example is the Aboriginal Legal Service, hello Jenny, and the Darawa Elders Group partnering with NSW. And they've developed an action plan and strategies that look at young people having a more effective diversion away from the criminal justice system in Walgett. And then there's a non-government organisation called Just Reinvest New South Wales, and they're supporting 4 sites. So we can send out just some of these links so that if you wanted to check out some of the websites that could be helpful to you. There's also, I think this is a really helpful resource. There's Justice Reinvestment Network Australia, and they've got amazing, I'll pop their website in the chat, they've got amazing resources, any kind of questions that you have. They've got an introduction to Justice Reinvestment and just a lot of things to help resource if you're looking at those proposals. But we're also happy to answer questions now, but hopefully that's helpful as an overview. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you. So I guess one of the key things to take away is that it's not necessarily a program. We're looking at initiatives, looking at more holistic approaches, but obviously local. So having that community led and having local community come up with, okay, let's have a look at what the underlying issues may be and how we could resolve those issues. Also, that collaboration is kind of key as well, considering that it may be across, or causes may be across various things like, housing, education, etc. You may find that you need to collaborate not only amongst community, but amongst, I guess, partners, and having that kind of collaboration is also helpful in terms of coming up with an initiative. So going now to the overview of the actual program itself, it is a statewide program. So there's 7.5 million over 3 years. It's not 7.5 per year over 3 years. So there's something that's just a distinction. So it's open now, and that 7.5 will be administered to successful applicants, but over a 3-year period. Priority will be given to Aboriginal community controlled organisations with initiatives over again, a 3-year period. There are 2 stages for the grant program. So we're currently in the EOI stage, and that's simply filling out an expression of interest form. What the information from that form will be used for is to, first of all, test whether your organisation is eligible to receive funding. But also the information that you put in the answers to the questions will be used to inform the assessment criteria and guidelines in stage 2 of the actual grant program itself. Understand that you won't be considered to move on to stage 2 without having submitted an EOI. So you must submit an EOI form to even be considered as eligible for stage 2. And the closing date for that is the 18th of March. So moving on to access to government data, you will have the opportunity to get access to government data to support your program, which I mentioned at the top of the session. So we've got Alana here from Boxer, and she'll speak more about what kind of data that is and what that process is. But just know that there will be data available, or can be data available, to be able to support your initiative and your application. The grant application, or the EOI process and grant application, will be done via Smarty Grant. So that's an online platform that government use for most of the grant programs now. There is a lot of support on the EOI form in terms of how to go through step by step to use Smarty Grants, but also we've got Smarty Grants people from DCJ online to answer any questions now, or if we need be, there's an email on the bottom of the slide there that we can actually send the questions to, and they'll be able to support you through that process of using Smarty Grants itself. And further to that, there's other resources that are on the DCJ website. So you may have seen the guidelines, the frequently asked questions, as well as, again, Smarty Grants, collateral, step-by-step guides, etc. And also the video is a promo video, which is really short, sharp, and quite succinct, and tells you exactly what the program is and what it's not. But it takes you through quite easy. I think it's like 3 or 6 minutes. So there are other resources available for you to use or to access. Next. So these are kind of the key timeline for the grant program. So stage 1, which I said we're currently in now, it does close the 18th of March. So please, if you are interested, please make sure you get the EOI form in before then. DCJ will then do an assessment, a preliminary assessment. Again, like I said, checking that the organisation is eligible, and then you'll be invited back to, if that is the case, you'll be invited back to do stage 2 to submit a full application form. That will be open for 6 weeks. So the 2nd of April is when it will be open, noting that is after Easter long weekend, and you'll have up until the 13th of May to submit an application. During this stage, I will say, like I said at the top, Thirawiri are available to support grant applicants through that process. So we will assist with writing with you the grant application, providing guidance and support in terms of what could be included and that kind of stuff, putting information together for you to be able to submit that form by the 13th of May. DCJ will then do a final assessment and award of the grants in June. Thirawiri are not in that process at all in terms of assessment and decision making. So we've designed it that way so we have better capacity to actually be able to help you through that application form stage. And there'll be no conflict in that regard. So we've deliberately done it that way. Next. So I'll hand it over to Alana now. So she's from Boxer, and she'll just take you through, I guess, some of the potential data that you could have access to support your information, to support your application. Thank you, Alana.
Amazing. Thanks, Melissa. So I'm from the Boxer, the Bureau of Crime Statistics and Research. It sounds quite long and intimidating, but really we're just a sort of team that have really interesting government data on the various stages of the justice system and people's contacts and the touch points. So kind of as an overview, the to give you a bit of an insight into the data we have, we've got information from the sort of police data records. So a lot of that relates to, you know, if you're interested in the level of crime in your community. We've also got information on the level of victimisation in a community. We've got information on offending rates. So if you're wanting to know, you know, what offending looks like for particular groups for particular offences within a community, that sort of information's available. And we've also got quite a bit of information on over policing. So if you're sort of wanting to unpack a particular sort of issue or problem and then look at the over policing that's happening with relation to that, we can also provide data on that. The next kind of bucket of data that we have is information on the courts as well. So if you're sort of interested in when a matter ends up to court, how busy that court is, we've got stuff on that. We've also got information on, for people who are going through the local court, what their outcomes are. Or you might also be interested in the penalties imposed in court. So when a person's found guilty, sort of, yeah, what happens to them then in their sentencing? That information's available. And then the last sort of bucket of information we have relates to custody data. So if you're interested in levels of incarceration in a certain community, that's available. You might also be interested in levels of incarceration more broadly across the state for Aboriginal adults or children. That is available too. And there's like quite a large amount of data. And so we're really strong supporters of justice reinvestment and believe that there is power in data. And so we want to make this data sort of accessible and equitable for everybody. So as part of this program, for people who get through to the stage 2, we'll be holding sort of a workshop as well, just to sort of talk through the data. And we'll be providing a general data pack that can be shared to all applicants as well, that will have sort of the same style of data. And then in the information session, we'll talk people through what the data all means, because often, even it happens to me, you'll open an Excel sheet and it's just this wall of numbers and you've got zero idea where to begin. And you kind of just go, oh, this is freaky. So we'll sort of, you know, talk people through what all the data means, how you can get insight from it, and show some examples of the different touch points of the criminal justice system that can sort of be looked at with the data as well. And then on top of that sort of standard general data pack we'll provide, we're also happy to sit down with applicants who want something a little bit different than what's in the data packs, and sort of work through if there's more useful things that we could provide that would be beneficial to your application. We're happy to do that too. So an example is with the Mountie Yarns. So this was sort of looking at the lived experiences of young people in Mount Druitt and had some really powerful takeaways for the government, and sort of looking at how we could use data for this. We worked through some ways that we could look at over policing of fare evasion by young people on the train. So we know that there's differences in how sort of police are policing fare evasion. So we've got data and information on that. And basically, like, the whole purpose of this is that we want to give the data, we don't want to have any barriers for access to it. We want to make it accessible so that people can, you know, we can give it to community and it can be used for advocacy and sort of supporting your own work. So in saying that, I just heard myself echo, sorry. If we've got the data and it's available at the community level, you can have it. There's no barriers to any of that. And for anyone who needs it for an application as well, we're here to support you and can sort of talk you through the particular use case that might be sort of beneficial to you, particularly given that there is quite a bit of it. Yeah, so just reach out if you have any questions. I think our email will be included maybe at the end or in the chat somewhere. But yeah, we're always happy to chat. We've also got a phone number. You're welcome to give us a call. We're one of those sort of unique organisations, or if you call up, you speak to a person straight away rather than going to like a chatbot or something. So yeah, call, email, any questions at all. But yeah, more than happy to help out and give everyone the data that's available.
Thanks, Alana. We really appreciate your welcoming everyone to kind of get in touch with Boxer. We have a question here from Deborah, who asks, what other kind of data is available? People assume that Boxer is Boxer data generally captures people who are already in the justice system, but what about people whose data we want to look at contributing factors of them entering into the justice system? So things like out-of-home care, rates, is that something that applicants could get access to?
Yeah, so that's a really great question, actually. I think my colleague Stephanie, she's probably better placed to answer that. Like we do a bit of work with Faxia around the out-of-home care information and that sort of thing. And there has been some linkages where we've looked at sort of the crossover between out-of-home care and contacts with the justice system, for example. I think the best thing to do for that would be probably shoot us an email or give us a call, and we can sit down with you and sort of talk you through what's available and how we can bring those two data sets together to support your application. Oh, and the best email address, I can pop that in the chat now.
And as you're doing that, Alana, there's also, I know there's like a central team in the Cabinet Office called Data Connectors, and they have a central email that I can also put into the chat, because it is a really good question about, and that's like exactly the type of thinking where if you're looking at how to have a systems focus, there's all these different entry points into the justice system. And I think I can't speak for other agencies giving their data, but I feel like the reason why Boxer is able to hand over that data really quickly, and we couldn't guarantee for the other agencies like out-of-home care that they could definitely give that data in the time frame for this specific grant round. So that was a distinction where like the applicants for stage 2 will definitely get the crime data, and you can definitely apply for any other government data. It's just the time frame is something that you should email the data connectors about, and I'll just grab that email and pop it in the chat as well.
And Alana, we've got another great question from Jenny, who asks, does Boxer have data on the rates of parole and the reasons people have granted or refused parole?
Yeah, so we don't have specifically information on like whether or not parole is granted, but when it comes to sentencing, we can look at whether or not a person received a custodial penalty or like a community sentence. We can also look at the duration of the sentence imposed, so sort of the duration of the non-parole period for people, and we can get down to the community level there as well. And so it's more sort of within the custody space, less so parole, but there is quite a bit of that we can dig into as well when it comes to what happened if the person was found guilty in the courts. One other thing I'll add as well is sort of similarly related to that earlier question as well. It's like when we look at the police data, we also have information on diversion rates. So it's not just people who sort of were proceeded to court by the police. We've also got information on things like, whether or not a person received a warning or a caution under the Young Offenders Act and how that differs sort of across community and across offences. So it's not necessarily just the justice system. We can also look a little bit about, if there's discrepancies in sort of the rates of diversion for particular offences too.
And thank you so much, Alana. We have another question from Corinne. And the question is, do you have data on academic levels of young people in the justice system?
That's a great question. It would be amazing. Like there's so many, unfortunately we don't, but there's so many different sort of other data sets that we would love to be able to tap into and connect this data to. Sort of when it comes to the describing characteristics of people within the justice system, we don't have too much information. It's mostly sort of age, sex, and Aboriginality. So we don't have the academic information, which would be incredible if we could build all these other things in and just make it it's quite rich at the moment, but there is obviously capacity for more data sets to be connected. Oh, and disability data. That's so with the disability data, we were part of the National Disability Data Asset last year did what they're calling a justice test case. So we were part of that, and it was essentially looking to see whether there was a feasibility in linking justice with disability data. So it was done as a one-off at the time, and we've got some publications that look at the intersection between disability and justice. It wasn't, it hasn't sort of yet been built into an ongoing, what they call like data asset, so essentially database. But we have a brief snapshot of a point in time from various publications. It's not something we're sort of able to dig into though at that community level, but we can provide some overarching patterns about the intersection between disability and justice. And yeah, if you wanted to shoot us an email, we can provide all that as well. We can give you the links to those publications. I'll pop them in the chat now though, while this meeting's going to.
Thank you. Just before more questions are asked, we're actually moving to the question section now, but we will send out a follow-up email to following this session, just a few more contacts like emails, some more information, some high-level information, critical timelines, that kind of stuff. And any questions we don't get to in this session, we'll also put in an email just so you've got the information and the questions are being answered. The frequently asked questions will also be updated to reflect these questions and answers as well. So if you need to refer back to that at a later stage, you can do that. But having said that, are there any other questions just in general or more specific to data or Smarty grants or in the program in general? There's a couple of hands that are up. I think
Edwina's hand was up, I think, first.
Yep. Edwina?
Yeah, I was just going to add to what Alana was talking about in terms of disability data. There has been some recent work done for Close the Gap for CAPO, so I'll confirm if that can be circulated. It's not location-wise, but it's an overall picture of adults and men and women and young people who have a mental disability or another impairment. So that might, Alana, I'll share that with you, because if requests come in for that, you might not have seen that come across your desk because it was only last week that it was presented. So I'll share that with you. Yeah.
Thanks, Edwina.
Thank you. Jenny?
Thanks, Melissa, and hello, everybody. Thanks for the presentation. You mentioned earlier that priority will be given to Aboriginal community control organisations. What will that look like? What does priority look like in practice in terms of both your EOI and the later application?
Thanks, Jenny. At this stage, we've made a commitment under the Closing the Gap priority reform to prioritise Aboriginal community controlled organisations. So that's a commitment that's written into the grant guidelines. And then we haven't yet developed like the assessment criteria. That's what the first phase of the program that closes on the 18th of March. Like we need that community input and that organisational input from potential applicants, and then we'll craft the assessment criteria. So to answer your question, like there is an in principle support, but we actually don't know what that looks like in terms of like the assessment matrix or how that's going to work in practice yet.
We also have a question from Joanne. The question is, are there any eligible, non-eligible costs for the grant yet? Specifically, will staff and employment costs be eligible?
You're on mute, Paula.
That's good to know. Thank you. That's a really good question. So we haven't written the stage 2 guidelines yet, but obviously for what we spoke about, like for being able to have build a program, you're going to need staffing costs. So staffing costs can definitely be included. I think in kind of the previous grants, there's been this support for staff that are like specifically part of this proposal, not necessarily like staff that are already part of the organization, but like making sure that it's project specific and specific to what you put in your proposal. But yeah, staffing can definitely be included.
Peter?
Hi, I'm here on behalf of Wildflower Gardens for Good. In terms of the grant writing assistance, how far up the chain do you go? So, you know, I've worked on grant applications where it can be sort of just a bit of a review and wordsmithing through to ones where we've worked together from the start to shape the overall program, strategy, design, costing, you know, sort of full service versus we'll write it up for you at the end, and but you've got to have done all the legwork. How does it fit there, or how do you envision that operating?
Yeah, well, our intention, Theorywary's intention is to be as supportive as it can be. So it is doing the work together to form the strategy, to form the concept even, then that, and work through that to complete the application form to then submit. Not necessarily just do what you do and then we'll just, you know, make it sound better. It's really a partnership. I mean, that's why we kind of are stepping aside from doing the assessment and decision making, so we can be more involved in the actual development of the application.
That is really good to hear. That's great.
Melissa, we also have a question from Jenny, who asks, why are Aboriginal-owned cooperatives not eligible? Is that just an oversight, for example? Tranby is a cooperative. Just a question maybe for.
I'm just putting in the chat the organisations, like the strict definition that we've got for who is eligible, so you can have a read of those and like reach out if you have questions. But these are currently the requirements for the organisations that are. So if it's an incorporated organisation and not-for-profit, then they're eligible. But happy to take more specific questions afterwards. Thanks.
We also have a question from Deborah, who asks, what is meant by the term sustainable?
That's a really good question as well. I think what we mean when we say that it's more longer term, and what we were talking about, and Melissa was giving like that example of not necessarily program by program, like government has this history of just doing kind of 12-month grants. Ideally, it would be longer than 3 years, but sustainable is kind of setting communities up for success in showing that there's a governance framework, that there's like a longer term plan. The community comes up with a plan of like how they actually want to see change, and then government's able to look at like what are the barriers in place and how can there be more cooperation. So I feel like sustainable is also about like looking as long term as is possible. Sustainable is about having community-led governance in place. Sustainable is about having that core group of leaders coming forward and having that really strong vision of like, well, this is what's needed. And I guess sustainable, you know, doesn't, when we talk about community coming together, it's not that there aren't, you know, disagreements or division in community. It's really about the fact that those leaders who are willing to step forward are supported to step forward and to plan for that longer term kind of as sustained change as possible. Looking at the crisis that we're in now with the amount of Aboriginal adults in jail and young people in jail, it's really that what is a longer term plan for real change. I hope that answers the question. It's a big question.
We have a hand raised. Teresa, do you want to?
Yeah, hi. Thank you. Hi, Paula. I'm just noting that before you mentioned that, you know, there's still a few things to be worked out. I'm just wondering what involvement there's been with the ALS, because, you know, as we know, the ALS is the peak justice advocate for Capo, and we do have that partnership. So I'm just wondering, in the development of this, what, how we're working towards like ensuring that the priority reforms are embedded across this work, and how it fits with the Aboriginal Justice Partnership. You know, some work that we have to do in terms of working with communities and local justice plans and things like that. So I'm just wondering how we're addressing that.
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear, Teresa. So the way that a lot of, without going through the whole history of how we developed this, we did leverage a lot of the Commonwealth, and you probably know that there was Capo involvement in the Commonwealth Justice Reinvestment grant program delivery. So at one stage we were hoping that we could have like a single door approach to like, you know, a Commonwealth and statewide grant program that would just be easier. And that, for various reasons I won't go into, that wasn't possible. So the way that we're, at least in the small way now that we can do that, is for the grant 2 assessment. We'd absolutely want, and that invitation to have capo reps on the assessment panel, making those key decisions about who is funded. That's where we're hoping to collaborate with ALS.
I think it's sorry, I just follow on from that. I think, you know, in that sort of that designing of it phase, though, is probably where this needs to happen before we get to just sort of that when it's all said and done, and then we're at sort of approving and deciding who gets funding. It's really designing what the program looks like.
Yeah, that's absolutely a fair point. And I feel like that's where, in terms of what we could do with the resources that we had, it was to leverage off the a lot of the work that was done at the Commonwealth level, and to try and kind of embed that as much as we could on the state level. But that's absolutely something that we need to consider and do better. Like the Productivity Commission report is a kind of key example of how we need to be doing that better. So I absolutely take your point.
And Paula, sorry, I'm just going to jump in because it follows on from Teresa's question. I mean, the way the Commonwealth did it has in fact already been called into question. Yeah. And there is a reset on the Commonwealth program in terms of, you know, trying to develop a genuine theory of change to build a strategic framework. So I guess I would caution against necessarily the Commonwealth approach, because it is actually being quite substantially reviewed right now. And it's now, and it was reviewed on the basis that it actually wasn't really incorporating the architecture of the National Agreement on Closing the Gap, and that the JPP didn't have a role. So, yeah, just something I suppose to think about, because we all want this program to succeed, and we all want communities to succeed. And the way to do that is to hasten slowly and to kind of really bring communities and ACCOs on board. So, yeah, just, you know, my thoughts on this.
I couldn't agree with you more. And like the image I had just listening to both you and Teresa is that like we walk, you know, we walk and then we trip and we stagger and then we stand back up. So I agree that it's imperative that we really build into practice how that shared partnership works.
Thank you for the feedback, everyone. I do want to talk about Sarah's question next, which asks us to clarify whether non-Aboriginal organisations must include in their application evidence of a plan to transition to an ACCO-controlled organisation, or to transition the work of the non-Indigenous organisation to an ACCO in the future.
Thanks, Sarah. I think if you have a look earlier in the chat, there's actually the strict eligibility. So if your organisation is currently a non-for-profit, then it's eligible. And I'd encourage you to just jump on Smarty Grants and put in an application, because we're giving priority to Aboriginal community controlled organisations. Like that's the preferred entity. So if your organisation has a plan to transition to ACCO status, then you should absolutely include that if you're invited back for stage 2. But at this stage, stage 1, before the 18th of March, is really just about like registering your interest. And then the question you've asked kind of is more a stage 2 question. You can reach out if you invited back for stage 2, and we can nut that out more. But hopefully that's answered, given enough guidance to help you in the meantime. Cheers, thanks.
Any other questions?
It's really fantastic. It was great to see all the questions too about the data. That just sparked everything. And it's true about working with the capo leads and all the questions about organizational eligibility. It's fantastic. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. So if there are no more questions, we can wrap it up now. Do we want to do that? Another question. Can funds be used for infrastructure?
Hello, Ken. I think that's probably a stage 2 question. I don't know that we've gone through what funds can and cannot be used for. So I think it's mainly at this stage just lodging that expression of interest. It's not like, we'll hopefully hear from the Smarty Grants team and just have a look at how easy that process is. I'll have a second look at the guidelines and see if I can find an answer to that question, but I don't think we've drilled down in that detail yet, Ken, sorry.
So as we mentioned earlier, there was a poll just to gauge whether people wanted to see a Smarty Grants demonstration of the actual expression of interest form. So if there are no more questions, we might just do that. And if you want to stay on and watch, you can. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time and questions. If you do have any other questions though, Jace, could you just put that presentation back up? We've got the email address and phone number. What we will do is send out a follow-up email with all those contact details and some other important information and examples again of Justice Reinvestment initiatives, just as a reference in the email following this session. So I got another thing. So do we want to actually go to the Smarty Grants presentation if people are interested in that? It's really just doing a walkthrough of what the actual expression of interest form is, and maybe that might prompt for more questions. So it might be worthwhile staying on just to see if it actually raises any questions for you once you go into the actual form.
Yeah, I'm happy to go through it, and I can see the poll, only 38% of people want it to have a look at it, but I'll go through it quickly anyway, just so you guys can have a look at what the form looks like. I'll just share my screen.
And maybe while Ella's doing that, if there are other questions, please feel free to keep popping them in the chat. And after Ella's finished, we can still answer any questions that we might have missed.
Cool. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm just on the Justice Reinvestment program landing page. And, this page is in-depth information about the program. And if I click on this heading here, it'll take you to information about the grant, including access to the grant guidelines and the frequently asked questions, information about the info sessions, expression of interest, which is the stage we're looking at here. Then stage 2 will be here, and just some info about Justice Reinvestment as well. So this is a really great page to have a look at to get all the information about Justice Reinvestment before you apply. So if we just click through to this link, it'll take you to the Smarty Grants landing page. And this page includes, it's just got like a help guide here, Smarty Grants help guide, Smarty Grants frequently asked questions. It also allows you to preview the form before you apply, and also you can also download a PDF version of the form, and that's a great option. Like if you download the preview of the form, you can share it with other people in your organization, and they can give you input or feedback on how to reply to questions. You can print this off, you can print a few copies and share them with people in your org, and then you can combine the responses into your EOI form. Just to note though, you must fill out your form on the Smarty Grants and not in the PDF preview version of the form. So to fill out an EOI, we just want to click Start a Submission. It'll take you to this page here. It will ask you to, if you've never used Smarty Grants before, register, otherwise log in with your credentials. So this takes you to the EOI form, and the Smarty Grants EOI process allows you to jump in and out of the EOI at any time using these buttons up here. So you can select Save and Close, for example, and if you log out, just make sure you log back into Smarty Grants with your credentials that you've used previously. And then what you want to do is navigate back to the EOI you started, which will be in My Submissions. You're looking for the one that you've started, as it says here, Justice Reinvestment Grant Program. So this, clicking My Submissions and making sure you're clicking on the right application form here will save you from starting a new submission from scratch. Just to note, DCJ will only accept one submission per applicant, so please review the My Submissions tab to ensure you're not creating multiple EOIs. So once you go back into your form, the first page you will notice includes an overview of the grant and information about the EOI, support. So if you have any questions at all, you can email this justicereinvestment@dca.nsw.gov.au. And then if we go down, just make sure you're saving your information as you go. You can save and navigate to different sections of your EOI by using down here, these options, or up the top, we've got the same options, save progress. You can also jump to different pages of the form on the side here. So at the bottom of the page, you'll see it has your EOI reference number. It's good to take a note of this, as normally we'll ask if you email into us what your reference number is, so it just makes it really handy for us. So the next page is very straightforward, applicant details and organisation details, primary contact details you're popping in here. If you are an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community controlled organisation, what entity type you are, if you plan to go into a partnership, auspice arrangement or subcontracting arrangement, put that information in here. Your insurance, you'll need to attach, and whether your organisation has been publicly identified as declining to join the New South Wales National Redress Scheme, pop that in here. So that's pretty straightforward second page. The third page has the grant program community input questions. So in this section, you're asked to answer 7 community input questions here. And you'll have the option as whether you want to answer the question in writing, or you can attach an audio or video response. So if you choose to attach an audio or video response, we've provided some instructions on how to do this, but you can always contact the Justice Reinvestment team by emailing them here if you have any queries about that. So that's just another option for you guys to make it easier for you if you don't feel confident in writing out your questions. The most important thing we want to note here in these questions is the hints. So you really need to, under each question, there's hints. Please, please, please read these hints before answering these questions. So just reading the hints will allow you to answer the questions more easily, and it'll also help us to understand better what your project is about. So yeah, that's the most important part in this section. There's 7 questions, each with the hints available underneath to make it easier for you guys. So just having a look at those is crucial. And the last page of the form is just the declaration. So on this page, it just includes details of the person who is authorising the grant. So this person must be a senior staff member, board member, or appropriately authorised volunteer of your organisation. So just make sure that you pop their information in there. And then there's just an applicant feedback on how you found the form. So after you've completed your EOI, it'll just ask you to review the form. So just make sure all your attachments are included and then you have answered each question fully. And note that if there's any incomplete mandatory fields when you submit your application, they'll be highlighted in red here. So just go back to the page and make sure that you've completed those mandatory questions, because you won't be able to submit your EOI unless you've completed all these mandatory questions. And once they're all completed, you can then, this will show up and you'll be able to submit your form. And once you've submitted your EOI form, you'll get an email from Smarty Grants confirming your submission. Again, if you have any questions, please email the Justice Reinvestment team. And the form's super simple. Yeah, any questions, let us know. But other than that, thank you guys and good luck.
Hello,
Stop
we
sharing.
have a random question about whether you can change your application once you've submitted it.
Normally we don't allow that, but if it's within the the time frame of when it's before it closes, we can reopen it for you. So that shouldn't be a problem. If you do want to make changes, we can reopen your form for you. But it just, if you can try and just save it as you go, and then once you're really sure that everything, all your answers are what you want, then submit it. That would be much easier for us. But there is the option, if you do think of something, oh, I should have included that, reach out to us and we can reopen it for you. Just make sure it's before the closing date.
The other thing that I guess should be mentioned too is that the questions aren't specifically asking you about what your initiative is. It's very general information. So in terms of submitting in the EOI, you don't have to have a fully formed plan of what the initiative is. You could just be thinking about it still, but you are interested in progressing. So not knowing exactly what the initiative should be and outlined and what you need to be achieving over 3 years is fine for now. It's just most important to get the expression of interest in, so you can at least be considered for the next stage.
I have a question from Jenny Loverick.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm just going through your eligibility bits here, and you said one of the eligible organisations is a New South Wales non-government organisation established under its own Act of Parliament. So that means any statutory organisation. Is that correct? So Legal Aid New South Wales could apply for these grants. You're on mute, Paula.
Second time unlucky.
Oh, great.
So I believe that was a carve out for some non-for-profit, for statutory authorities. So that would be possible. I think there was also to enable some charities are established under that definition, and we wanted to, given that we're prioritizing ECHOs, we also wanted to make sure that we're not excluding any non-for-profit structures. So that's where that came through.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Anything else? Do you have any final comments or remarks, Paula, that you want to share before we leave, before we close up?
So I just really appreciate everyone tuning in and taking part of your time. I know that like grants on a whole, that can take a lot of time, they can be exhausting. Here we really did want to design a grants program that will listen to community needs in this first stage, in the EOI stage. That's why we're really just hoping that you'll find the time to apply by the 18th of March, and then Theory Weary support will be available for that second stage at no cost to the applicants. Also, it's just been great to work in partnership with Theory Weary. So thanks, Melissa, thanks, Jason. And we just hope everyone applies.
Thank you. And yes, echoing that, thank you for your time for joining us. The EOIs do close the 18th of March, so please get it in before then. And like I said, we will send a follow-up email just with important contacts, some more probably key information about the program, just for you to refer to, as well as links to other resources that we've mentioned at the top of the session as well. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful week and good luck with your expression of interest. Hopefully see you in stage 2. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Jason, I just thought I'd say hi before.
Hey Eddie,
I
how
got to
you
jump
going?
out. Oh, good. Are you at Therawiri now?
I am, yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
I got your email. I saved your email, so I'll drop you a line and
Yeah, good.
yeah, check in with you later.
Old colleague, old neighbour. There we go. Can't get rid of each other.
No, you always come full circle. Eh?
That's
Also,
it.
yeah. Oh, well, I'll let you get back to it. But good to see you. Yeah,
Good to
hope
see
the
ya.
family as well.
Yeah, thanks.
It's
Talk
great
soon.
that you could join us, Edwina. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Bye.
It's just us, yeah?
I'll stop the recording.